Hey guys, what's up and welcome to the channel, the Shotgun Shogun, and today I'm going to be joined by Mevlin, and we're going to be going over the results, the statistics of the most recent Champions Cup. Now, I know we've got a lot of you guys liked this the last time we did it, so I wanted to make sure that we did this wrap up yet again, and Mevlin was kind enough to come join me. Now, Mevlin, one of the big things was we had a really interesting number of matches that I want to get out right out of the gate. So we actually played 69 total matches. Nice. Please comment nice down below.
Pre-planned, obviously.
It was pre-planned. Actually, we were like, hey, can you guys throw this match so that we can have this number of matches? But we did see some interesting picks this time around out of those 69 matches, like the 50% Landy win rate. Didn't think you would see Landy in the tournament, but well, we did. We saw Landy quite a bit, actually. And by that, I mean 2 times. So 50% Landy win rate in the tournament, but it doesn't matter because it still counts. What were some of your more interesting picks that came through?
For me, I just find that the early Blood Moon Haste, every time, even when there's no revive on the other team, I thought that was fairly interesting. And even then, even though people first pick ML Haste, people still go RUELE afterwards in RB. So I guess early picking ML Haste kind of makes sense in this current meta.
Yeah, and the big thing here too is that out of those matches, 38 matches had a Blood Moon Haste in them, and it actually was very strong because you did see a 73.68%, about 74% win rate with Blood Moon Haste, and it wasn't always to, like you said, to counter RB. It was, just a raw Blood Moon Haste, a lot of times being ran with the likes of Last Rider KRAU. Very strong against the Rylets that were popping up, because with the true damage that does help mitigate a lot of the evasion, and you just usually build him portrait and super tanky, and he just puts out a lot of damage.
Actually, we saw a lot of Idol's Cheer Blood Moon Haste, actually.
That's, yes,
correctly.
That
portrait
is true.
There was a couple of portrait, but Idol Haste was, I think, more dominant than portrait at this time. Also, gotta remember that 10% mitigation.
Yes.
Having a knight with adamant and Blood Moon Haste means you're gonna have some form of mitigation no matter who they ban. And with the current meta being so tanky, you want to have that form of mitigation.
Yeah, no, for sure. Mitigation, very, very important. But we also brought up the Last Rider KRAU, and I know that the 2 days that you had casted with me, we had 100% Last Rider KRAU representation, whether it was through pre-ban, whether it was through picks, or whether it was through normal bans after the pick. Now, after all of the data was through, I want you to wager a quick guess on how many of the 69 matches Last Rider KRAU was represented in.
If you're asking me, I want to say all of them.
Actually, surprisingly, the first day, there were actually a few matches that did not have a Last Rider KRAU.
Well, I guess that kind of makes sense that everyone who won ended up going to day 2. You got to have Last Rider KRAU in your pool.
Yes, so 60 matches out of 69 matches either had Last Rider KRAU pre-banned, picked, or post-banned. That is actually, that's really, really insane. Although he only made it into the matches 27 times, most of the time, like I said, getting pre-banned or post-banned. He was pre-banned 14 matches and he was post-banned 19. He did have a 78% win rate, so the true damage was very, very big, especially, you know, dealing with your Rylets, dealing with any heavy tanky characters. Just KRAU cycle right through all of those. And I do know there were a couple matches where they picked both Blood Moon Haste and Last Rider KRAU,
Yep.
just slapping down a ton of true damage. It was very strong.
Those would like stop a lot of Rylets. Like you would second guess, do I want to Rylet here, considering there's double true damage? Your evasion is not going to do that much when they're just, they're not critting, so it doesn't matter if you evade or not. Also, I want to mention that a lot of players that we know who have ML KRAU actually pre-ban ML KRAU. They're so scared of that unit that they don't want to go for that 50-50 in case they don't get first pick, because then they know the opponent's going to pick Last Rider KRAU instead. So yeah. I don't know if it's like they're sort of wasting their bans on a hero that they have fully built, but at the same time they're so scared of losing that 50-50, which just goes to show like Last Rider KRAU is here to stay.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, that was actually something that we brought up during the tournament, was that especially after like the first 2 rounds, right, most of the people that were getting into the quarterfinals, the semifinals, the finals, we know that they had this unit. And the big thing is, it's such an oppressive unit that you have to ban it, or yep. You know, like you said, you don't want to risk the 50-50 of having to go up against that unit. Something that I found kind of interesting was the lack of DIENE this time around. Now, typically you think of the 2 top healers in the game, right? RUELE, DIENE. RUELE was picked up 27 times this tournament. A little over 50% win rate, about 52%. But DIENE, however, who even the last tournament had a similar-ish, she was around the same pick rate as RUELE, not as much obviously, but was still up there quite a bit. This time around, she was only picked 11 times. Now, she did have a 55% win rate, but do you think with the amount of people picking Last Rider KRAU, with people picking ML Haste, that's kind of made DIENE fall off a little bit because of the true damage?
I think it is, because it's exactly like what Rylet is, right? Rylet dodges crit damage, so DIENE also works that way in that she helps counter crit units, but with the meta of not critting, just pure true damage, DIENE's gonna fall off for a while until SG figures out a way to like deal with these two very oppressive true damage units. Also, yeah. A TYWIN has high representation, and DIENE cannot handle a TYWIN. She doesn't have enough FRES, and she doesn't cleanse fast enough to stop a TYWINs as well.
Yeah, speaking of a TYWIN's, very, very high win rate as well, alongside of the Blood Moon Haste, alongside of your Rider KRAU. Picked 18 times, was pre-banned 12 times, and 78% win rate. Just goes to show. And a lot of them, I know that a lot of times people were like, when he first got his buff, right, there was a lot of, you know, high damage semi-bruiser ML TYWINs, but a lot of people have switched to the very, very high effectiveness ambitious TYWIN, and once you get the cycle down with him to where he is stunning and slowing, it's almost game over. We actually, I believe, saw that in the game between KRAU and SUISIDE, where KRAU had him locked down, taking care of the vast majority of the fight. But the moment that A TYWIN was able to slip out of the control and just start cycling that soul burned S3, it was just all over from there. Such a very, very oppressive unit. Not only that, but you have to work around the passive as well, which also makes it very real hard to deal with being able to control him.
Actually, now that I think about it, looking at these three heroes, they all are pretty good into RUELE, right? Blood Moon Haste kills one unit. If RUELE revives, you get buffs. Last Starter KRAU, RUELE cannot heal with like the damage Last Starter KRAU will deal late game.
Right.
Ambitious TYWIN can cycle and CC RUELE to death, and the RUELE can't do nothing. So I find it interesting that these three heroes pretty good into a lot of the meta healers we have right now. I wonder if that has to do with anything with how the current meta is shifting.
Yeah, I have noticed. I mean, obviously we saw in the tournament that it was, penta, octuple knight meta, where you just basically pick a knight to fill in a slot, and then a lot of times it's also a damage dealer, and it's just a mitigation damage fight. However, RUELE did get through about 27 times, surprisingly did get pre-banned 9 times, and had a 52% win rate, 51.85% win rate. So she did have a bit better of a win rate last time around. So, but I do think that the teams that people are playing into her are going to really just kind of hammer her down. The thing with RUELE when you go up against a Blood Moon Haste is you have to use that S3 before they die.
Exactly.
Or else, yeah, you pretty much, it's just you're in shambles after that. So it is interesting to see how some of these meta units kind of shifted a little bit. And one of the most meta units that I'm kind of surprised about is the Seaside Bellona. Now, last tournament, Seaside Bell had just an amazingly high win rate, which I mean is to be expected. It's Seaside Bell, right? But this time around, she got through 36 times, did get banned out 8 times, and only had a 39% win rate. This is actually pretty insane considering I believe last time around she had something around like a 70% win rate, just showing that. I mean, I can't imagine it's anything other than really the knight meta coming through and really hammering her out with that KRAU. I mean, honestly, KRAU into her is, yeah.
Just a loss. Also, if you want to talk about SSB, you might as well talk about ROANA, the direct counter to Seaside Bellona. ROANA actually didn't have a high win rate either.
No, I believe she only won maybe one game. It was a lot of, yeah.
And like, so it's kind of weird seeing Seaside Bellona lower this time, even though ROANA isn't showing prominence. And I mean, it just has to be KRAU. You can't play Seaside Bellona if KRAU is on the field.
Right. No, for sure. Especially if you have extra mitigation. His S3 into her just prevents any of the defense breaks. Sure, you get the little bit of damage, but you also get the shield at the same time. The other thing too that I noticed were a lot of times people would pick the unit and their direct counter. So you would see a Seaside Bell and a Bellona, and a ROANA. Yeah, Seaside Bell and a ROANA. And a lot of times it just didn't work out the way that they wanted to, or you would take like the calculated risk of banning something else, and then they just banned the unit that you didn't want them to ban, and now your ROANA is like just completely useless, right? So it was a little bit interesting. Now, speaking of, your typical meta overpowered characters, your Arbiter VILDRED picked 30 times, pre-banned 14. So people still a little sketched out by the Arbiter VILDRED. Did have a 60% win rate. Not as good as the tanks, but it's, it is Arby. One of the problems that Arbiter VILDRED runs into is if Arbiter VILDRED doesn't have a greater attack or even an attack up, I feel like with the tank meta, with the mitigation, if he doesn't get that Arby basket, then he just doesn't do much, right?
Yeah, you're banking on that 40% for a win. That's not good enough.
Right. And I mean, outside of that, he just really, you know, so much mitigation. You don't get the 40%, and you just come back from the dead, and the Arius adamant holders just kind of chuckle at you as they come back through and clean you up. So it is a little tough with Arby. Now I know that Arby, you know, terrorizes like some of the earlier metas levels of RTA. 60% still better than 50-50 right now. We did see
I do want to talk about Arby really quick.
Yeah.
I think a lot of players in the Tournament Cup have really strong Arbies, though, in that their Arbies are probably the best geared units in their list, looking at you, Platty. But it is interesting to see Arby being at 60%, even though Blood Moon Haste is constantly picked.
Yes.
That's one thing. So, like,
the big thing, too, though, is a lot of people picked Blood Moon Haste and Arbiter VILDRED.
That's true, actually, yes.
And that was very, very common picks. So a lot of people did not first pick RB. Typically, it was, you know, I'm going to first pick FCC or Last Rider KRAU or something like that. And then the next person, bam, RB Blood Moon Haste, you know. Mostly because if you first pick RB, well, they're going to just first pick Last Rider KRAU and ML Haste and then GG, right? So a lot of times you did see the two of those together, and that's actually a great pair when it comes to picking two units so that they can't pick your way better than ROANA and Bell. Yeah, absolutely.
That one does not work at all.
Right. Now, interestingly, this tournament, we saw a fair amount of ALENCIA. I believe the last main tournament, we really didn't see too much in the way of ALENCIA. I felt like she was kind of dropping off a little bit, but we did see 22 ALENCIAs come through this time around and had about a 55% win rate. Not amazing, but not the worst, actually. When it comes to warriors, I feel like there's two warriors in the game right now that you pick, and they're counter picks typically. It's ALENCIA and Fire RAVI. Like that's pretty much the two.
Surprised that ALENCIA has two pre-bans, so someone was scared about ALENCIA.
Yeah, well, I do believe that it was probably targeted bans against somebody, because I know that myself, a lot of people for a while would just ban my ALENCIA because they knew that my ALENCIA was good, or they were going to bring a lot of buffs, and they were like, I don't want to get my buffs yelled off. So
speaking of ALENCIA, though, I think it's fair to talk about KRAU as well, considering they sort of do the same thing, that you get defense buff. Right. In a true damage meta, it seems like KRAU is doing a little bit better, given ALENCIA was at 55, KRAU's around at 65, so 10% more.
Yeah, and actually KRAU got picked a decent bit more this tournament, and I think it's because a lot of people are going double KRAU. If you get the Last Rider KRAU, picking blue KRAU as well into your lineup is very super strong, because again, you have two true damage sources. You do have a defense buff, you have shields for mitigation. Both of them can run different artifacts. You would obviously have your Arius on your blue KRAU and your adamant on your Last Rider KRAU, so you have both the ability for both mitigation buffs or artifacts right there. And 65% win rate, because the other thing too is once you're in that position that you can start horsing with both of them, it's real tough. Who do you focus down there? How do you control out the blue KRAU versus the other one? So and then you do have the defense buff coming out, the pushback, the provokes, things along those lines. So definitely a very, very strong combo. And I feel like we're saying Last Rider KRAU a lot, for pretty much every unit that we talk about here, but you can't help it when you have 60 out of 69 matches where you were kind of represented in some way, shape, or form. So definitely was real big. But speaking of Fire Ravi, definitely like got buffs recently. 7 times she made it through. Actually did get pre-banned one time. It just goes to show how strong she is, but a 71.43% win rate. I do know that the last day when we had Edward's Ravi was insane with the almost 1v3 match. It was poetry in motion. Unfortunately, it didn't work, but to hold your own against an RUELE, and I believe an Momo, I think was the third one.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, for a while too. It wasn't like it was just oh hey, I'm gonna solo this for like 2 or 3 rounds. It was a good hot minute, and I thought it was gonna actually pull it off. It was gonna be crazy.
I've been wrecked by so many Ravis with my Blingo because Ravi counters and he stuns Blingo, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm done with my turn. But counter Ravi, speed Ravi, they're both fairly strong right now. I just find that she fits the warrior role completely, which is a selfish unit that just solos the team by herself with lifesteal, her self-sustain, being tanky and dealing a lot of damage. So I think Ravi's really in a good spot right now, being the role model for all the other warriors, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The stun is really huge too and can be very, very super clutch. But speaking of DPSers, I'm going to talk about these 2 DPS because, well, I mean, they're semi-staples. You have Spectre Tenebria and you have Tempest SURIN. Now, previously, talking about Tempest SURIN, I had brought up that it feels like a lot of people have kind of learned how to deal with Tempest SURIN, especially like at the top end of players, right? This time around just goes to show that, well, that's absolutely still true. Only had a 23% win rate. Spectre Tenebria, though, picked 30 times, 53.33% win rate here, repeating, of course. Very, very strong. If you can pick her into the other thing too with Last Rider KRAU, for example, is if you pick Last Rider KRAU and Spectre Tenebria together, you're forced to change the way that you play. Either you bring AoE to try to hit the Spectre Tenebria and then you feed the Last Rider KRAU, or you bring single target to kill the Last Rider KRAU and then you die to Spectre Tenebria. So it is a very dangerous combo, and I saw a lot of people pulling that one off as well, because it's like now you have to shift your draft, or you have to show your hand at what you're planning on banning, and you basically give the other person 4 units for free.
I was actually going to mention that if you see a Last Rider KRAU with Steny, you kind of want to pick one and ban the other, but you are showing your hand. If you're going single target, well, your opponent knows that you're going to ban Steny, and if you go AoE, then your opponent is going to guess that you're banning their Last Rider KRAU, which could give them the advantage in the draft, knowing for beforehand who you're going to ban.
Yeah, absolutely. I was
going to mention that I'm actually surprised. I feel like Steny should be higher, considering that really strong synergy with Last Rider KRAU. I'm surprised she's only at 50%. I'm probably missing something here. There's probably some drafting strategy that's being involved here. Why there's a huge difference between Last Rider KRAU and Spectre.
Yeah,
because Spectre is also strong to RB as well. So Spectre being able to counter one of the top tier units in the game should probably make her higher. I'm honest. Do you have any thoughts on this?
So I do think that a lot of times when we did see these Spectre Tenebrias, it was into some AoE, right? Or you had a very fast RB or something along those lines. I'd have to go back and watch some of those, but I do know that a lot of those you just had very bad situations for the Spectre Tenebria. Maybe they thought that they were going to get a certain unit, they didn't, and then it just kind of ended up in shambles. I do believe a lot of the losses for Specteni were just kind of down to bad drafting, whereas Last Rider KRAU, you can pretty much draft poorly and still win, right?
It was ridiculous. Like you can't go wrong. Like there's no lose.
Right. Now, one of the interesting things this time around, so last tournament, Falconer Corey and Fallen Cecilia were around the same pick rate. This time around, however, Falconer Corey only made it through 32 times, whereas Fallen Cecilia made it through 49 times. Now, Falconer Corey did get pre-banned 7, whereas Fallen Cecilia got pre-banned 12 times. Falconer Corey, though, got post-banned 15 times to Fallen Cecilia's 7 times. So it's almost like they just had to let the Falconer Corey through, and then we're just like, no, I have to ban this. Now, Falconer Corey not doing as well this time around with only a 40% win rate to Fallen Cecilia's 53% win rate. I think that it's kind of up due to the fact that they're fundamentally different tanks, because I mean Falconer Corey is more of a speedy support tank, whereas Fallen Cecilia is more of the just brick wall type of character. Lilius, the one who kind of took it last time around with the 60% win rate, though, picked 30 times, was not pre-banned, was not post-banned. Last time around hit a 60% win rate, this time dropping down to 43%. So definitely a little bit weaker this tournament versus the last tournament for actually all 3 of the tanks. I do believe that Fallen Cecilia had a bit better of a win rate, and I know Falconer Corey had a bit better of a win rate on that as well. And I'm wondering if it's the other tanks that are having issues with the true damage, with the Blood Moon Hastes, with the Dark Corvuses, with the KRAUs, with the Last Rider KRAUs.
I mean, it's hard for me to put input on tanks because I don't play tanks, but I feel like Falconer KLURI is tied towards RUELE's win rate. And if RUELE isn't top tier in the meta, I feel like Falconer KLURI just drops as well with RUELE.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised at the 50% win rate from Remnant Violet. 28 times picked, pre-ban 9, post-ban 9, and only had a 50% win rate. So definitely was a little bit interesting. But I mean, hey, that's actually pretty typical of a Remnant Violet, right? Because I mean, it's always 50-50 on whether or not you're going to win or lose. So actually perfectly balanced. But speaking of the true damage, though, I mentioned Dark Corvus. We actually saw quite a few Dark Corvuses this time around. He made it through 9 times and actually had a 66.66% win rate. So he won 2/3 of his matches, actually, which is kind of interesting. I mean, the problem with Dark Corvus is, like, once you get him, once he ramps up, once he can start getting those soul burns, after he takes out a target, a threat to him, it's all over from there. It's just all downhill, and he's just going to slowly but surely walk forward after he takes out whatever it is that is there to threaten him, you know, whether it's a CC or something along those lines.
I feel like Dark Corvus is always going to be having a high win rate in that, because people don't early pick Dark Corvus, they always last pick Dark Corvus, and people who play Dark Corvus understand Dark Corvus completely, in that, you know, they know when to use him and they know when not to use him. So I feel like no matter what the meta is, Dark Corvus is always going to be up there. He's one of those weird units, right? Like maybe like Sage Ball and Sezen as well, being like the clutch 5th pick. Yeah, that always will win you the game if that goes through, depending on what the opponent has.
Yeah, now if only Smilegate would give Sage Ball a S3.
S3, yeah. Did we actually see any Sage Balls in
We did. We saw one.
And he won.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These are heroes that will always have a high win rate, because the people who play them understand the hero and know exactly when to use them.
Yep. Now, one of the interesting things, and I think it's kind of telling with this unit, is Vivian. And One of the things, and I had mentioned this earlier to some people when we were talking about EEs for characters, there were actually a couple of matches where if Vivian had the cleanse EE, she would have won the game.
I actually recently switched to the cleanse EE as well. But
yes,
if you want to talk about Vivian, I also want to talk about Dizzy at the same time, given they're actually on the exact win rate. They're both 1/3. They won 1 out of 3. And it's kind of weird to see Dizzy this low, considering people are afraid of Dizzy for quite a while. But Dizzy's not doing good this time, I think. And that might have to do with why Vivian is also pretty low, considering she's probably one of the prime Dizzy counters.
Yeah, well, so I feel like a lot of times if you take Dizzy into the match, people typically know how to play around Dizzy. They know how to abuse Dizzy. Right. Depending on what you drafted against Dizzy, it can actually be a huge boon for you. And if you have any way to just get rid of the cancer that she puts on you, there's not too much else that she can do. And a lot of times people will try to run super fast Dizzies that just do not have the bulk. And if they're too fast and your opponent has immunity, well, you give them a whole free turn for them to just take you out as a target. So there is definitely that.
I'm a KRAU plus a TYWIN. Now tanks cannot be CC'd for some reason, even though, before that was how you deal with the like condom comps. You CC them to death, but apparently SG wants tanks to have anti-CC as well. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, and then outside of that, we did see some interesting picks. We did see a Yuna. We saw a specialty change Wanda, the all-rounder Wanda. We did see the, like I said, 50% win rate Landy RTA tournament. You guys just have to get good like Platty. That's what it is, Platty rocking it out. Some Destina. There were a lot of there were a lot of extra picks, but I mean, it was again very, very dominated by the tank meta, and I'm kind of hoping that they put out something soon, maybe before the next tournament, that will kind of help against that. But speaking of the next tournament, we will be having the next tournament in about 3.5 weeks. It will be November 14th, 15th, and 16th. Actually, let me make sure that is correct. No, it will be the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. So ignore the first thing that I said there. So it'll be the 20th, the 21st, and the 22nd of November. It will be the same rule set, same format, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. We will do best of threes for all of the first rounds, and then 2 p.m. Eastern on Saturday and 2 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. There is a sign up down in the description. The only stipulation is that you are champion or above this season, or you ended champion or above last season. Now, I do know that the season most likely coming to an end somewhat in the near future, so a lot of you are going to be pushing anyways. The other thing too is this will be open for a week. We are going to try to get as many people in as possible. I've got a couple of ideas that will likely be talked about in the future, but I know that we only pick 32. I'm trying to expand that to 64 because last time we had 90 people sign up. I'm not too sure how many people will have sign up this time. I would imagine it'll probably be similar and or more. So if we do get even more than that and we can't get everybody in, I'll try to expand it even more. Eventually Mevlin, we're just gonna be doing tournaments every weekend, and then it'll be every weekend and every Wednesday, and then eventually it's just gonna be tournaments every day, tournament matches every day. That would actually,
you're gonna have your own tournament, I'm gonna have my own tournament, everyone's own tournament, and
just all kinds of tournaments. But Mevlin, I do want to thank you for coming out and talking to me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for co-hosting the tournaments as well. Had a lot of fun with you. You'll be back for more, trust me. Yeah, if you guys haven't yet, go follow Mevlin on Twitch, on YouTube. All of his information is down below. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe bell button, hit the bell notification, and be ready for more hot RTA action. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy, homies. Peace.
Later.
Crack it.